episode of the Fantasy Fellow Show. Today we are continuing our 32-team projection series. This time we're working in the AFC West. We're going to be looking at the Las Vegas Raiders in this video. What I normally do is I do a 2023 review where we just kind of talk about how things went last year, maybe what's changed from this year, from last year, and then we'll break into each position and kind of give you guys my preliminary numbers for each one. So we'll hop right into a screen share here, and I will recommend you guys should subscribe to the channel. It helps us grow, like the video, all that good stuff, and check out the fantasyfellowship.com. I have a lot of information on the website for you guys. Check out one of the memberships as you prep for your fantasy draft. So what are we looking at here? This is my projection document. I have a page for each team going back to 2017. This year, we got Antonio Pierce and Luke Getsy calling the shots here as head coach and offensive coordinator. Last year, it was kind of just a mess. McDaniels finally got kicked out. Pierce comes in. Lombardi and Hardigree, kind of handed it off to each other. And it was a down year, to say the least here. No Derek Carr for the Raiders for the first time in a while. And we see Aiden O'Connell kind of take over for Jimmy Garoppolo through the beginning part of the year. We saw a little bit of Brian Hoyer. It was just an up and down, bumpy year. Let's kind of review the numbers here from the top. We saw 557 passing attempts. We saw about 62.5% completion percentage, about 3,666 passing yards, 20 touchdowns to 18 interception. Not a great ratio. They ran the ball enough, but they didn't have success running the ball. 413 attempts is fine, but 1,500 yards and only 8 rushing touchdowns. It was a pretty bad year running the football. Passing the ball, again, it was just bad all around, if we're just being honest here. The Raiders somehow found a way to win 8 games, 8-9 on the season. If we look at the numbers just, specifically, Jimmy Garoppolo was pretty bad. 7 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. He completed enough passes, but his accuracy was not ideal here. So we're looking at about 1,200 yards, 7 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. We're probably never going to see Jimmy Garoppolo enter a team's starting, week 1 quarterback again, and we'll move on to Aiden O'Connell, who actually looked good in parts. He finished the season strong, 12 touchdowns, 7 interceptions, 2,200 total yards, a low completion percentage of 62%, but for a rookie, that's passable. And then he just doesn't run the ball enough. So for fantasy football, he's not the best opportunity for a quarterback with no rushing numbers. At running back, Josh Jacobs struggled to get anything going. He did rush for 233 attempts, 805 yards, and 6 touchdowns. He was decent as a receiver, though. 37 receptions, 54 catches, about 300 yards. And we saw Zamir White come in at the end of the year and start the last 4 games or so, and he looked good. 104 rushing attempts, 450 yards, a touchdown, and he did get some receiving work. They did use Amir Abdullah a little bit as a receiver, but we're excited about Zamir White's opportunity ahead of him. Receiver Devontae Adams had a good year, up and down year, 103 catches, though, 175 targets, almost 1,150 yards and 8 touchdowns. Jacoby Myers actually had a nice season as the second target, 71 catches, 800 yards, and 8 touchdowns. And then after that, really no consistency. Hunter Renfrow kind of disappeared. Trey Tucker had some moments. The tight ends, Michael Mayer, never really established himself as the guy. He did have, some moments as well. And then Austin Hooper kind of clogged it in at tight end too. So overall, a lot to be desired here. This team, they got some studs in Devontae Adams and a couple other players here, but it's really all about that quarterback position. So 2023 review, they had to work with what they had. I'll give them a C- on the 2023 season. The fact that they won 8 games with Aiden O'Connell and Jimmy Garoppolo, I think that's pretty good. And there's, room to grow defensively. Offensive line can get better. Another year of Aiden O'Connell and I guess Gardner Minshew, who we'll talk about here in a second. So 2023 review, it was bad, but if you look at it and you see what they were working with, it was actually okay, and they might have overachieved. Honestly, they played a lot harder for Pierce at the end of the year, so I like what we saw down the stretch. But let's get into the 2024 numbers here. I will talk about quarterback first. I'll just mention at the top here again, Antonio Pierce and Luke Getsy calling plays. We've seen Getsy call plays for Chicago the last few years. He was in Green Bay for a number of years before that. Didn't really work out in Chicago, but he did some nice things in Green Bay under Aaron Rodgers. So what to expect here? I think they're going to improve offensively in every metric this year. I just think the continuity of this team, another year of Antonio Pierce, I think we could see some growth from the Raiders offense. So 570 passing attempts for me. Now, I split that up between O'Connell and Gardner Minshew. I think we're going to see O'Connell get the start week 1. and he'll hold on to that job for as long as he can. I gave Minshew about 5 games in this split here, but for now I have O'Connell going for 410 passing attempts, almost 2,900 passing yards, 17 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Again, not a lot of rushing numbers here. I give him a little bit here, but nothing really to note. I think the beginning of the year, the schedule's pretty bad for the Raiders. I think in a super flex league, you can put O'Connell down as your QB3, or if you want to hold on to Minshew, that's probably the best way to operate this. But with Minshew, he at least offers some rushing upside. So when he does get in, I think he's more of like a fringe QB 2-3 for super flex leagues, just because they have weapons. You know, you got Devontae, Jacoby, Brock Bowers. There's a lot to like here with some of the weapons that they have. So O'Connell, purely just like an emergency QB3 type guy. I'm probably not even going to draft him in a super flex league just because I don't think he's going to hold on to the job all season. And we know the Raiders are probably looking for a starting quarterback in 2025. I don't think it's going to be one of these two guys unless, you know, O'Connell has a glow up or something crazy happens. But I'm looking at a 12-game start for O'Connell, 5 for Gardner Minshew. I think Minshew, you know, he'll be steady. We've seen him be steady for a few stops here, whether it was in Indy and Philadelphia for a couple games there. Jacksonville, we've seen enough. He's got some experience here, and he could be the guy at the end of the year that just gives them a spark, you know, to finish strong again. I don't think the Raiders are making the playoffs. I think they're going to be in that 7, 8, 9 win range that they were in last year. Let's look at the quarterback rankings real quick here and see what I can do. I have – let me see. I got Aiden O'Connell down here at QB 32. So last among the starting QBs, basically. Gardner Minshew in here at QB 34. Until we get some clarity, like if we, you know, if Gardner Minshew or somebody wins this job outright, if it's O'Connell or Gardner Minshew, if they win it outright and they declare it early, I will probably add more games to that player and switch some takes here. But I think for now, it's hard to project either of these guys and to get really excited about either of them. You could take shots on them in best ball, but I just don't really feel great about the number of games that each QB is going to play. So I think it's going to be better QB play than they had last year. I mean, basically, you had, 4, 5, 6 starts out of Garoppolo. I think Minshew can outplay Garoppolo's numbers from last year. And O'Connell, he should be better in those 10, 11, 12 games that he played in last year. So overall, it's a net positive. You know, I have them throwing a little bit more, not much more, but I have them almost 2.5 completion percents more than last year. I have them throwing for 4,020 yards, more touchdowns, less interceptions. I think it's a small growth win in the QB department, but they still need to find their guy. So probably just going to ignore Raiders QB for fantasy unless Minshew gets in Superflex. But let's move on to a more exciting position here for the Raiders. That's going to be running back. Zamir White was one of the biggest winners in the draft because they didn't really add anybody to threaten his first and second down workload. So last year we saw him handle a lot of touches the last 4 games, and he looked good doing so. He only had 1 touchdown in that span, so I think I would like to see that number grow while he's starting. But I think he's the clear starting running back, and you'll see Alexander Mattison, who they brought in, be kind of like a third down pass blocking, kind of a change of pace emergency back, maybe some potential a series every now and then kind of type back, just a pure backup to Zamir White. I don't think Madison's that good, but I think the coaches trust him, and that's what they like about him. But we'll keep an eye on Dylan Laube out of New Hampshire. He is purely a receiving type back. He might even do some special teams work for them, but they're already talking him up as a guy that is looking not overwhelmed as a rookie, and he can handle some things. And he might earn some third down work and maybe some first and second down work as well. But we'll start with Zamir White, who I have going for 225 rushing attempts, 1,005 yards, 6 rushing touchdowns, 27 catches, 35 targets, and 175 yards receiving, which is solid, like low-end RB2 numbers. The only issue is he's not going to be like a big PPR type banger. I think Zamir White's better off in a half PPR to standard league where he's just accumulating, 60 to 80 yards per game and getting a couple catches, and, you maybe got a 50% chance at a touchdown some weeks. I think he looks pretty good. And, if we go further down the list here, I have last year we saw 337 carries to the top 2 running backs last year. Between the top 2 this year, I have 310, but I think Laube could get into more, first and second down, more carry work than what Amir Abdullah did last year. So I might be massaging these numbers a little bit here to get Zamir White's attempts up. I think 225 might be a little low. They gave their starting running back last year 337 carries pretty much. So not going to see Zamir White get 300 carries, but maybe 270, 280 is possible. So Mattison, again, purely just a handcuff. I'm not drafting him a lot. You could grab him because I think if Zamir White does get hurt, Mattison would be kind of the primary guy. So purely a handcuff for Mattison. I got him at 85 attempts, about 15 targets, just an emergency back there. But Laube excites me because I think he could eat into some of the base third down work stuff, where if he's the best receiving back and offers the most upside there, he could be the backup running back to Zamir White. And Madison's more of just the change of pace, first and second down kind of backup player. So we'll watch for Laube in preseason here coming up, but I have him going for 45 rushing attempts. I got him at 25 targets and a couple touchdowns in each department there. But let's look and see. I don't think Ameer Abdullah is going to do much, so we'll just kind of footnote him. But for the running back numbers here, I do have Zamir White a little bit low. He's at RB 30. And that's because he doesn't catch a lot of passes. Now, if I filter that to a half PPR format, that's what's going to put him a little bit higher. I got him at RB 29 still. Let me look at his standard numbers. The big issue is this Raiders offense is not going to score a lot of touchdowns. In a standard, he just moves up to RB 28. So I think he's a low-end RB2 option for you. And, if he gets more carries than the 225 that I'm talking about, then, yeah, he's going to move up the numbers here, and I might put him at like 245 or something like that and just boost him up a little bit because I think RB 30 is a little low. I think he's more in that RB 24 to 27 range. And it's an unproven guy, so you're taking a bit of a risk here. But I don't think Madison's, going to steal his carries. If anything, I think he's just going to lose some receiving work to whether it's Mattison or Laube. So that hesitates me a little bit. I think for where he's being drafted, he's an okay low-end RB2. Looks best as your RB3 in a best ball format. But I want to like Zamir White. So don't be afraid to take Zamir White. I think he's got some potential this year to be a bell cow back. But we'll go into the wide receivers next year. We're talking Davante Adams, Jakobi Meyers, Trey Tucker, Michael Gallup, DJ Turner, and Lediatric Griffin here. It's all Davante and Jakobi Meyers. We might see Trey Tucker get a little bit more use this year. I think Michael Gallup retired, so I'm going to have to update these numbers and move around some of these targets to, I don't know, maybe I boost more to Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer. So I will have to remove Gallup here and figure out who's going to be the number 4 receiver for the Raiders. But it's all about Davante Adams. Last year, 175 targets, 103 catches. I think those numbers are coming down this year as they've added, Brock Bowers. They have 2 tight ends. We might see more 2 tight end stuff and more spread the ball out. But I still think Davante Adams is a rock solid wide receiver 2 for fantasy. I got him at 98 catches, 147 targets, 1,115 yards, and 7 touchdowns. I think, just the potential upgrade at quarterback, maybe I'm too low on my Davante numbers. Like I have him regressing in every category from last year. But if the quarterback play is better, I might have to move some of my Michael Gallup. Like even if I just did, 10 targets extra to Davante Adams and I kind of just move some things around here. Let's give Davante Adams 6 more catches and get him back up to 104. And I'll take, 50 yards and add him on to Davante Adams. So we got him up a little bit now. So kind of what he was at last year. Maybe more efficient, with the targets and the reception percentages, but he's still really good. I don't expect to see a decline yet. I think he's still a year or 2 away from a decline. So he looks good as a wide receiver too. He could finish as a top 10 wide receiver. So if you want someone with some upside still, I don't mind taking Davante Adams. But what do we do with Jakobi Meyers, who was solid last year? He ran hot on touchdowns. I think he's a fine wide receiver too in this system. I got him at 71 catches, 107 targets, 780 yards, and 5 touchdowns. I think he'll be, kind of like a flex bench player for you, whether he's your 4th or 5th receiver off the bench. I don't want to have to rely on him in my starting lineup for fantasy unless something crazy happens with Minshew and O'Connell. But I think for now, he's just, purely a double-digit round bench play at this point for your squad. And then we'll see about Trey Tucker being kind of a vertical deep threat. He did have some nice moments last year. I have him improving from his rookie year, 24 catches, 395 yards, and 3 touchdowns. I also think he's going to be used in the running game a little bit to get some explosive plays there. So keep an eye out for Trey Tucker. And then, I'm going to have to look and see who I think is going to be the wide receiver for the Raiders. And I might have some more targets and some things to move around. Let's see where I have the receivers coming in. I do have to update my button real quick because I added some numbers for Davante. I got him at wide receiver 10. So still a low-end wide receiver 1. You get him in the second or third round of your draft sometimes, usually the second round of your drafts, and I think that's fine. He's still a volume player. He's still Devontae freaking Adams. And then if I scroll further down the list here, I have Jacoby, wide receiver 45, so still a useful player for fantasy, more of a wide receiver 4 in my ranking here. But there's going to be games where he has big moments, and you'll be happy if you have Jacoby Myers. We don't need to worry about where Trey Tucker ranks. But that's enough on receiver. Let's finish up with the tight end spots here. We're talking Brock Bowers, first-round pick, and Michael Mayer, who was a really promising second-round pick last year by them, and then Harrison Bryant at tight end 3. It's all about Brock Bowers here. We want to see him come in and be that second or third target. I think that's why I'm kind of lower on Myers this year, is just because that competition for number 2, number 3 targets is going to be a lot better, or a lot more difficult with Brock Bowers. I have Bowers coming in at 62 receptions, 95 targets, 695 yards, and 4 touchdowns, which it feels low. He could smash this, especially if, Devontae or Jacoby, one of those guys gets hurt, or if he's just better than Jacoby Myers at this point. That wouldn't surprise me if he's the number 2 target and receiver on this team. But we do have to advise caution. It's not the most ideal situation. He's going to a team that's going to struggle throwing the ball, and they have a target hog in Devontae Adams. So I want to just advise a little bit of caution with Brock Bowers. I think he could be a top 10, top 12 tight end. But I think if you're drafting Brock Bowers to be your tight end 1, you might want to grab, just another bullet there, whether it's, Pat Freiermuth or someone like Luke Musgrave, another tight end that could be a top 10, top 12 tight end. Michael Mayer is still going to be involved. We're going to still see him in blocking situations and 2 tight end stuff. I have Michael Mayer at 25 receptions, 40 targets, 265 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And let's see where I have Brock Bowers coming in on the tight end rankings. I got him right at tight end 14. So he's just right on the cusp of being a startable tight end for fantasy football. And, maybe the first month or so, he's not, a must start tight end, but I could definitely see him as the year goes on. Maybe he plays as like a tight end 2 to first month and a half, but maybe the last 8 games, he's a top 10 tight end. I could totally see that. So if you want to take a shot on what was probably the greatest tight end prospect that we've seen come out in a very long time, I'm fine with it. And I think we should all be excited about Brock Bowers and see what he can do. But that's it. That is the 2024 Raiders projections. Let me know what you guys think in the comments for my final thoughts here. I think the Raiders are going to struggle in 2024 again. I was looking at their schedule, and I was kind of coming up, with a lot of losses, whether it's, 5, 6, 7 wins. That's kind of their floor. I think they're more in that 7, 8, 9 win category range here. I don't think they're a playoff team, but I do think we're going to see them play better as a whole offensively. I think they're going to run the ball better than they did last year, and I think they're going to be a more efficient passing team. Just bringing in Minshew, that's an upgrade over Garoppolo. I think Minshew's probably the better quarterback over Aiden O'Connell. But who knows? We could see some nice growth out of O'Connell. He played a lot last year. Hopefully he learned a lot. And I'll need to keep watching and seeing what the Raiders are saying in training camp. So that's it for the 2024 Las Vegas Raiders. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you guys are new, and I appreciate your time. Thank you guys so much. Peace.